Tanya ma'am, we can start now. We are live.
Okay, sir. Good evening, everyone. I welcome each one of you to the Samavesh Inclusive Education Circle, CTPD India. And this is the first program that we are organizing under the circle. It is said that the beauty of the world lies in the diversity of its people. The Council for Teachers Professional Development India has been working relentlessly, tirelessly towards the empowerment of the teachers through its various circle programs and collaborative programs. And we are very happy that so many educators are with us from India and across the borders. We thought and we were encouraged to start with this inclusive education circle, primarily with the objective that we can, as educators, promote inclusive practices and we can equip each other with strategies and resources to create inclusive learning environments for students of all abilities. Besides this, the Samavesh Inclusive Education Circle is conceptualized and shall endeavor to increase awareness and understanding amongst the educators about diverse learning needs and the importance of inclusive education. With these objectives in mind, we wish through this endeavor of Samavesh Inclusive Education Circle to have tangible outcomes as educators, as practitioners, to improve the inclusion in our classrooms, enhance student engagement, and feel as teachers more confident and competent in addressing to diversity in our education system. Therefore, through various sensitization and training programs, certificate courses, resource material development, and peer support network, we will hopefully be able to move ahead with our vision. And we look forward to involve various stakeholders, the field practitioners, the experts, the parents, and by and large, the community in understanding and supporting inclusive education practices. Thus, implementing the Samavesh Inclusive Education Circle aligns with CTPD India's commitment to diversity, equity, and excellence in education. Dear friends, we have an expert with us who shall today take us on a journey to understand inclusion and to embrace diversity. And it is very important to understand this and practice it in light of the United Nations advocacy for inclusion and diversity through its various policies, the Sustainable Development Goal 4, India's National Education Policy 2020, and the National Curriculum Framework, NCF 2023. All of these focus on inclusion. I am delighted to welcome, on behalf of CTPD India, our guest for the day, Professor Dr. Renu Malaviya, ma'am. Welcome, ma'am, for the first episode of Samavesh. Let me also take the honor to welcome Professor Dr. Sanjay Kumar, who is the president of CTPD Trust and he's program director of CTPD India. I welcome all the members of CTPD, the board of directors, the board of trustees who have been so generous to join this evening for the first session of the circle. Thank you everyone for being here. And above all, the participants who are always there to encourage us. Professor Renu Malaviya ma'am needs no introduction. Most of us know her and her contributions in the field of education and specifically in the field of inclusive education. Yet, it is my privilege that I had an opportunity once again to introduce ma'am to all of you. Dr. Renu Malaviya is professor at the Department of Education, Lady Irwin College, University of Delhi. Her doctoral work is in the area of family-school interaction from Zakir Hussain Center of Educational Studies, Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. She completed her MSc Child Development from Lady Irwin College, University of Delhi, and her MEd from Himachal University. Professor Malaviya holds a diploma in the management of learning disabilities from SNDT University, Mumbai, and a certificate in professional practice, aspects of learning difficulties for children and young people with disabilities from Roehampton University, UK. Ma'am is a certified master trainer in family therapy by Indian Association of Family Therapy. She has numerous prestigious achievements to her credit. She's the advisor at the Chief Commissioner of Disability Delhi. She's a certified special educator, disability expert and inspector, member expert academic committee at the Rehabilitation Council of India, Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment, Government of India. Besides that, she is Secretary General of the All India Women Education Fund Association, acronymed as IFA, and she is holding the position of Joint Secretary, Indian Association of Family Therapy. Besides that, she is the trainer of trainers, a master trainer, resource person, and expert at the CIT, NCRT, CBSE, SCERT, NEPA, NIOS, and IGNOU. She has significant contributions to research, and several scholars have completed their doctoral, postgraduate, and undergraduate thesis, dissertations, and project under her able guidance. We are very happy that Professor Malaviya holds an esteemed position as one of the board of mentors of CTPD India. We welcome you, ma'am, for the session, and we could not have started this circle without your presence. And today we look forward and we feel really honored that the various participants who are here on the platform and who are watching you live today on YouTube and will see your program. Maybe they are not actively seeing it today, but they can see it again through YouTube, will really understand that what is inclusion and how we can become better practitioners of inclusion. Welcome, ma'am. The stage is all yours. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tanya, for giving me this prestigious introduction. I'm privileged to be here at the platform of CTPT. And thank you, the entire team of CTPT, Dr. Sanjay Kumar, Dr. Tanya Gupta, the board of directors, and the others who have uh, made this platforms possible and given me this privilege.
तो time
It
कैसे
is
चला था?
it is indeed, so important that this chapter is being started. And so when we talk about inclusion, inclusion is something which in a diverse country like ours has always been there. Maybe we don't understand what has been in our systems forever. Of course, it's not been extremely refined. And that is what we are looking for to take it forward. Inclusion can be in all walks of, we need inclusion in all walks of society. Today we are here probably to discuss about inclusions of the persons with disabilities or the learners with disabilities or special needs who need to be part of our school systems and now more so of the higher education institutions. So let's go quickly to what exactly is when I, as a person in the higher education system, attempts to look at what is inclusion. Inclusion is predominantly a practice of creating environments where individuals with all background, abilities, characteristics feel respected, valued, and fully engaged. Like in our classrooms, unless we are able to engage every child in the class in our teaching learning processes. Now they're not even saying teaching learning processes. They are calling it learning teaching processes. I teach so that with the major objective of that my learners learn. The main focus has moved from teaching to the ability to help me get the best learning in my students. So inclusion is about taking in, understanding, accepting, not tolerating, accepting diversities in my classrooms. And when I talk about diversities, we also are not only accepting them, but working towards providing equal opportunities, or rather more than equal opportunities, equitable opportunities to the learners. And so comes in the point that inclusion is to be possible in different settings, to be celebrated in different efforts have to be made, and accommodation to the diverse needs and fostering a sense of belonging, where everyone feels it is my world. Not somebody feeling that it is my world. Okay, you also please going to give you a little space there. It is everyone's spaces. And I, the pedagogue, the teacher, the professor, is in such a fortunate place to be able to make this possibility happen in our classrooms. So embracing diversity. So when we look at remember now the floors don't have a mosaic type of a floor. But if you go and look around the older types of flooring that used to be there, it used to be made out of small chips of marbles of very different colors, different sizes. And together it used to look amazingly a unit, a complete unit, where each different color, each different size had an important position. Everyone was important. And that is what we talk about when we are talking about embracing diversities and making it inclusive, where everyone belongs. So when I go forward, as we go into this, and we talk about segregation to inclusion to belongingness, we will again go and reflect on this as we move forward. So embracing diversities involves creating an inclusive environment where everyone feels respected, valued, supported, and where their unique perspective and contributions are acknowledged and utilized. They say this is going to be the era of the neurodiverse. We come with certain type of brains and certain functional or way our brains take in information, construct information, and take it forward. Most of us are like this, of a particular set of brains. But we have these neurodiverse learners who are entirely different. As we move forward, we'll talk about autism, which is such a word which everyone's heard. But these autistic children with autism, children with Asperger's, are the ones who behave, I always love to say, like a computer, where what is right, what is wrong is wrong. And like my mother would often do is when we were youngsters, when we were babies, and if she didn't like anything and we were outside, she would show us her eyes in a particular way. And it was a non-verbal clue, hey, no naughtiness just now. Right? So that was a non-verbal clue. And that is what my students with autism don't understand. Nor does this screen of my laptop. I can keep giving it as many dirty looks as possible. It will do exactly what it likes. Imagine, so you have a student in your class who is of this characteristic, but is a wonderful learner, gives the assignments on time, everything. May I accept that student in my classroom? Is that the change to be in me or that particular child? That particular child doesn't smile or laugh at my joke. So do I give that child less marks or do I feel something? So this is the type of changes we bring about when we include people. We need to also rethink how we look at the world. NEP 2020 has clearly mandated that classrooms are going to be student or learner centered. So, the demigod in the classroom, the teacher who knew it all, who had center stage, no longer has the center stage. But I still continue to be the person who is bringing about the maximum change, or at least facilitating the maximum change. I may not be bringing about maximum change. I am facilitating that maximum change. RPWD Act 2016 has certified 21 disabilities. As of now, those 21 disabilities haven't even reached higher education. They have to go through the school system. We still have a lot of dropouts in spite of the fact that we boast about almost 100% retention in many of our states, and in others, a very high percentage of retention. But yes, the school system is really working towards bringing in inclusion, children with different, diverse special needs into its fold. NEP 2020 is mandatory. RPWD Act 2016, which NEP 2020 says, has said very clearly that what is said in RPWD Act 2016 is accepted by NEP 2020 as it is. So NEP 2020 has not brought about any change in that. And what does RPWD Act says? That all these children or learners have to be included into the education stream, and the best abilities and potentials have to be elicited from them. As of now, only we have been able to work on some of them. The medically induced disabilities related, like thalassemia, sickle cell, etc. I may not be focusing too much on those. What I would probably be focusing here more is I'm not deleting them from my interactions here, but the major focus is on the physical disability, the disabilities, intellectual, specific learning disabilities, dyslexia, dysgraphia, dyscalculia, autism, and others, and also the other disabilities, which are the mental illnesses, which we will not be focusing so much, but the mental impact that has. So locomotor disabilities is also a part of physical disabilities. I was trying to go through, and this has been there for a very long time. Like I said, the school system has been able to work on inclusion better than the higher education system. Probably we are not so much at fault because until the children reach the higher education system, we will not be in a position to actually evolve our own skills. The country says that we have about 3.18% of the students with disability passed class 12 in 2024. They haven't entered the higher education system. So I took in the information from the earlier years. Only according to the All India Survey on Higher Education 21-22, in higher education institutions, only 0.2% of students with disabilities were taken in or they enrolled. They may not have enrolled. So 3.18 and only 0.2 are able to sustain themselves in higher education. So there is an issue. I come from the University of Delhi. And therein, we have seats, and it is 3% to 5% of we have seats which are for students with disability. Even there, we have not been able to even fill 3% of the seats. When as per the UGC norms, as by other norms, there is a comparatively a higher understanding of acceptance of children with disabilities. There are a lot of limitations, of course. I also come to what UGC has done, has been mandating, has funds for it, is the equal opportunity cells. And it hasn't started today. It has been there for, I think, before the 9th plan. What does equal opportunity cell do? And it is a part mandatory UGC has given the funding to all universities to maintain the equal opportunity cells for children with special needs. And in this, benchmark disabilities, which are certified by different processes as mandated by RPWD Act 2016, the benchmark disabilities, which is 40% and above, are the ones who are certified as persons with disability. The equal opportunity cells have the mandate as per UGC to support, to sensitize, to create awareness, to develop inclusive environments in the higher education systems. At least the university that I come from, we have a main central equal opportunity cell which feeds into all the colleges and the other higher education. So every higher education institution of the university has a equal opportunity cell. And there is a direct connect. So the notices come to us, expectations of what needs to be done during the examination, during the teaching learning processes, for developing a barrier-free environment comes to each higher education institute. And they further implement that. And this is exactly how many other universities are also trying to work. What is also being done is that the B.Ed programs, the teacher learning aid, and the M.Ed programs, which are not the B.Ed special education programs, but the other programs, the B.Ed general program, now have compulsory paper, foundation papers on inclusive schools, or call it anything else, where a little orientation is being conducted towards what is inclusion. All faculty, if you would have noticed, for those of you who have recently done any faculty development program or refresher course to update your for your promotions, for your API, etc., that now there are sessions on disability awareness and inclusive education. The type of privileges which are very clearly mandated by CBSE and other boards and are being executed, are now in place, also being executed, are supposed to be executed, are going to be compulsorily expected to be executed, are, for example, a scribe. A scribe is a writer. So if I have an issue with handwriting, I may be what is called print blind, and I can read, but the reading does not make me really get back and explain to you what I have read. An example I can give you here is, many a times you're sitting in front of the television, or you're scrolling through your WhatsApp messages or the videos that keep coming, and somebody in the family passes by and says, "Kya dekh rahe ho?" And you're blank. Dekh to rahe the itni der se. That is what happens with the children with dyslexia, SLD, many a times. Because their brain looks at information not in a seriation process, but the entire education system is in a seriation. This leads to this, leads to this. And therefore, you will find children with neurodiversities, especially the children with SLT, are amazingly good with event management. Just think of the institutions that you're coming from. Where are those children who can barely manage to give you assignments on time, hardly manage to pass in the examination, are always late with submitting the assignments, are never on time on the day of the examination, but ask them to plan out an annual function for the students, it will be done amazingly well. And as a teacher, at least I do, मैं नहीं कर सकती थी जो इसने करा है, पर मैं क्या कहती हूँ, जान पूछ के करता है ऐसा ये, देखा, वहां कर सकता है तो यहाँ नहीं करता, मुझे तंग करने के लिए करता है, मुझे तंग करने के लिए नहीं करता, मेरा ब्रेन जो है वो फर्क है, पता नहीं मेरा ही ब्रेन तो कहीं पर डिसेबल्ड तो नहीं है. After all, 40% of these children are multi-billionaires, not millionaires. Pan-global earth. तो ये एजुकेशन सिस्टम में कोई कमी है ना, वहां जाके क्या हो जाता है, तो हमारे सिस्टम में ही कोई कमी है, यानी प्रोफेसर रेणु मालविया में कोई कमी है. जब मैं क्लास में पढ़ाती हूँ, मैं सारे बच्चों को नहीं ले जा पा रही, मेरे में कोई तो कमी है स्किल में. So that is what NEP 2020 says, and RPWD has been trying to say in its own way, is that every child matters. And why aren't we giving it importance, right? So yeah, so now we have the children with autism. I will give you some examples here. You know, we have these young adult girls, young adults, just walking into life, and some of them decide to have red hair and green hair and blue hair. That is the latest norms. What do I say? ये क्या करके आए हो, या just to be in with the young generation, what will I say? लाल बाल तुम्हारे बहुत अच्छे लग रहे हैं, अब मुझे कुछ नहीं समझ में आ रहा है ये लाल बाल करी क्यों है, but I will just do it because this is the answer that my young adult wants. I am doing a socially approved thing of connecting with her. What does her peer group, who has autism spectrum disorder, is highly intelligent, Asperger's. One component of autism spectrum disorder is Asperger's, where IQ is very high, but कंप्यूटर के जैसे काम करते हैं, नॉन वर्बल कुछ नहीं समझ में आता, सोशली अप्रूव बिहेवियर्स क्या है वो नहीं समझ में आता है, तो वो क्या करती है, जाके उसके बाल ऐसे पकड़ती है. अब then a big issue happens. The girl will go and complain, मेरे बाल खींचे थे, ऐसे किया था, अगले दिन फिर रोज मेरे बाल खींचती है. She's not pulling the hair. She doesn't understand that socially approved behavior. If I have a good rapport with Dr. Tanya Gupta and she decides to color her hair red, right?
Ma'am, you've gone on mute, ma'am. Yes.
Oh, when did I go on mute? Did you hear my red hair example?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, we did. Yes.
So now that is the social approved behaviors that are not happening. So these are the type of thing that I, as a pedagogue, as a teacher of higher education, need to understand. सब कुछ तो अच्छा कर रही है, इतने अच्छे नंबर भी तो ला रही है. So I mean, these are helpers. Then what the EOC also talks about, the child who comes over, locomotor disabilities, the timetable. The timetable has one class here, the other class somewhere else, and those of us who have made timetables know what it is like. Oh my God. And larger the institution, the tougher it is, isn't it? So now it's so difficult, and you have the child who is who who is on a wheelchair, who uses a wheelchair, or who uses a clutch, and hence has difficulty in walking. And all the child says is every class the child reaches 5 minutes late. And the teachers, we get so upset. You should enter the class before I enter the class. And anyone who enters the class after me will not be allowed or will not be given attendance. Have I looked at this locomotor disability? But remember, that child, that young adult is also a young adult like anyone else. I'll give you an example of the student, very chirpy, very happy child, but who was blind. So we learned that any child with disability or blind needs to be made to sit in the front row. So I did the same for this particular child, for this particular young adult. It's not a child, but we call them children. We are Indians. After a while, she comes over and says, and she was very angry with me. And she said, why are you making me every day sit in front? But that's what I had learned all my life in theory. And then she tells me, मैं पीछे अपने friends के साथ बैठना चाहती हूँ. And then something luckily clicked in my mind. Oh, पीछे जो बच्चे बैठते हैं वो एक दूसरे से बात करते हैं, and that is peer learning. Have we all not done it in our classes? When ma'am teaches you or sir teaches you something, writes on the blackboard, it's alien. It appears to be coming from Mars. And then my peer group, my partner says, ये कह रहे हैं. मुझे तब समझ में आता है, इसी को हम peer learning कहते हैं, buddy system कहते हैं. तो उसको वो नहीं मिल रहा था. So this is little things that we need to do in our education system, in our classes. I'll narrate another example. We had an international conference, and there were children, young adults who came from who were hearing impaired. And having so many of them hearing impaired was very difficult for us because I didn't even know that at that point of time, in sign language, Indian Sign Language, clapping in Indian Sign Language is this. All of us know that. I didn't know that then, even this. Every time I would make them sit in front, and the RCI people who had come to inspect also had, why are they sitting at the back? Every time they would go and sit in the back. Ultimately, the whole group came and crowded around me. And they started using sign language. For me, I just know English and Hindi. I did not know sign language, obviously. I still don't know. I just know a little bit now. Like if I go to South India, I know a little few words of Tamil and a few words of something else. So that's the amount of sign language I still. But now I'm so much better in communication. Anyway, so they came over. I had to call my colleague who is a sign language interpreter. ये क्या बोल रहे हैं? Says, why are you making us sit at the back? I mean, sit in front. We want to sit at the back. Again, the same thing what my student with blindness wanted. So ultimately, getting all scared about RCI, I let them sit at the back. So this community engagement, do I understand as a general teacher of higher education? There's a lot of work going on. NCRT has so many YouTubes on their different portals related to inclusive education. UGC also is attempting to do few, but NCRT is working at the school level. Surely when I look at them, I understand what I need to do in my higher education classes also. So we don't have an equivalent of NCRT for higher education. But I take advantage of the NCRT YouTubes to understand what I can do in my classes. We often say the ministries don't do anything, but they have done a little bit of work. There are schemes, there are everything. We will need an entire different, session for that. But just go to those websites. They have made it blind friendly. Their audio screen, on top, which is this hand, the right hand. See, I am behaving like a dyslexic, right and left difficulty, but I'm not a benchmark dyslexic. So then this happens in my classes, in your classes too. Na? So there is a little icon or little written there which says audio screen reader. Text to speech, you click on that, and there is also blind friendly written there. So the black and white contrast, if you're visually impaired, not blind, visually impaired, you need more of contrast. On my blackboard writing, am I providing contrast? Am I using colored chalks, which are good for the visually impaired, which are good for the specific learning disability? मैं भी नहीं करती हूँ बहुत सी बार, but yes, I tried to do that. We had a wonderful philosophy teacher, but what was the problem was that she would start writing here, run and write on the other side, right there, right there. So by the time you could see what was written on the blackboard, you just wrote it down. And as such, philosophy for a young adult of 20 is something very alien. I could never understand. Nick kahan likha hai? Now, this is what happens with my neurodiverse children in my classroom. Is my blackboard work properly organized? I like to write like that. No, NEP 2020 says, forget about your likeness. What the student likes is what we have to do. They made our lives so difficult. And all this we have to do also because it's mandatory by these acts. And then we have and other inspections also, which have marking for disability-friendly campuses, and also IQAC and everything has space for that. So there we have to do it. But why? Attitude, क्या यार इतना सब नहीं करते तो ना करें. But every child in my classroom is important, isn't it? Because they are my biggest gifts when they do well in life. I'm more proud, more happy than the salary that I take back. Will everyone vouch for that, isn't it? Are there, and I hope there are nothing coming in the chat, Dr. Tanya, chat box, which I may not have answered. And I'm sorry I went off like a teacher, what do we say, centered thing. And do you think there is anyone who would like me to stop? And there's something that you want to ask in between. I'm right there to try and answer. Otherwise, we can continue.
Ma'am, there was just an initial question where Dr. Bindu Grover was asking, ma'am, could you please shed some light on difference between inclusion and belonging?
Oh, I'm coming to I'm coming to that. I'll come to that. Right. So I was just talking about, okay, let me answer that question first. When we're talking about, I'll just go to her answer, but for answering inclusion and belongingness, I need to make a little backward move. Exclusion is where I don't even see except anyone who is different from my type of brain people, my type of body structure. So somebody who has one hand, sorry, you can't write with your right hand? Sorry, I only need people with right hand who can write with right hand in my classroom. Exclusion. Okay, then segregation is okay. You can write with the right hand, but you come to the with the your left hand, but you go to a different class. So you are in the same structure, and but you're not given. You don't. I will not change for you. We will get somebody else who understands you. But now all the acts and policies are saying, hey, Dr. Professor Renu Malaviya, please change or else. So from there we go on to inclusion is when everyone is in the same regular classroom. But I continue to accept the same from everyone. So the file, I will give you marks for the practical file if it is neatly written, not for the content and the reflection that you have put in that practical file. That is secondary. So the objectives of my lesson plan, there is something wrong there. The importance is on the reflection or the content or how the process of the experiment, how it was conducted, not only on the neatness. So that is you're unifying the whole system. Belongingness is when you have equity in the classroom. All the girls, supposing we have girls and boys in the classroom, everyone will give the assignment on the same time, same date, everything. Everyone examination, same marks. But if there is something to be picked up from the higher level shelf in the classroom, they will not, the teacher will ask that boy who is 7 feet, pick it up, please. They will not ask me who is barely 5 feet. Equity. As girls, we may want certain things, which could be the red hair I'm talking about, or the tops that I might be wanting to wear. So now this is talking. So you can't stay in the classroom. Girls are talking something. The teacher will say, "Kya baatein kar rahe ho tum?" Boys will come over and say, "Tum kya baatein kar rahe ho?" The boys may be more interested. There will be girls interested in cricket also, but the boys might be more interested in cricket. I'm just saying. So that is there might be other boyish things. So although all of us are equal, but we also have our own belonging. So if there's a child who is using a wheelchair, keeping that child away from the other child learner in another class who's also using a wheelchair is removing their need for belongingness. If there are children who are dyslexic, then they will have similar type of issues. So keeping them together, letting them form their own group will help them learn also better, come up with their issues better. That is having inclusion with belongingness. But they still belong to the larger system. It's like in schools, we used to have section A, section B, section C, whatever. So section A was my section, but still the school.
Ma'am, sorry to interrupt you. You're on mute, ma'am. Just a second back only, ma'am. Yes. We were on the section A and section B.
Okay, so we were on section A and section B. So in schools, remember, we used to have, if you will remember that, it happens in college also. If I belong to the geography department, somebody else belongs to the history department, somebody to the education department. So I have a belongingness to my department, but at the same time, I also belong to the larger college that I am part of. And the education system or the college goes out of its way to keep these two different types of inclusion or belongingness intact. And often you will see in the institutions also, geography वालों को ज़्यादा importance देते हैं, हमें नहीं देते. So that is the belongingness which is required for the larger thing. So inclusion does not mean unification. Everyone will become similar. It means you keep your individual identity, but become part of the larger identity. Very thing like what our constitution talks about, exactly that. So I hope I made that point clear. When we talk about why all these things are in place, and we have people who are blind, we have IAS officers like Bino Seple and others who are blind, we have a CEOs like Shrikant Bola, who runs a 50 crore company but was rejected by the higher education system. I still remember our Professor Mittal, who was my senior, and I learned a lot from him. And I remember we were in a conference and there was this long room and we were sitting there and interacting and talking, कितना लंबा होगा ये, कितने meters का होगा ये कमरा. And he just came in, क्या बातें कर रहे हो? I said, sir, हम ये बात पूछने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं, हमारे पास फीता तो है नहीं देखने के लिए. And long he told us. तो आपको कैसे पता चला? Says, इतने मेरे steps, इतना फुट हो जाता है. तो मैं यहाँ से जब वहां तक गया था डाइनिंग मतलब फूड एरिया में, तो मैंने इतने स्टेप्स लिए थे. Who is the disabled? Right? So this is what we are talking about. But why is this not happening? It is not happening because of attitudinal issues. ये है, ये blind है, ये नहीं कर सकता, ये dyslexic है, इसका तो दिमाग बाहर ही लगता है, ये पढ़ाई नहीं कर सकता. It's a set in us. And I'll give you the example of Divyanshu Ganatre, who is the first solo blind paraglider. And he was intelligent and he wanted to do paragliding, and that also solo. 19 instructors he went to. Nobody dared to teach him paragliding. आपको दिखता नहीं है. And he continued to explain कि मुझे देखने की जरूरत ही नहीं है paragliding में. Now, how many of us sitting here will even be able to, our stereotypes कि paragliding के लिए sight chahiye. Ultimately, somebody took up the challenge and he became a solo blind paraglider. So that taking up that challenge is a major thing that you're talking about. So attitudes, stereotypes. Blind can sing well. Not all blind can sing well. Stigma. If I don't have a well-formed body, as per what is considered to be a well-formed body, then it could be bad कर्म की वजह से है कहीं मेरे पे भी ना रब कर जाए भाई मैं नहीं इसको अपना फ्रेंड बनाती बोलूंगी नहीं मैं ये बात पर दिमाग में मेरे ये चल रहा है social norms. I'll give you an example of a social norm. And I have also learned to do this. It's taken a lot of time, I'm sure. The first professor, assistant professor who was blind, who became a part of our institution, none of us really knew how to interact. One or two of us who had learned in theory कि जब अगर उनको दिख नहीं रहा है तो आपको वो उनको अपने को इंट्रोड्यूस करना चाहिए. We are accustomed to smiling at each other. Then you say hello. After the person smiled, if the other person hasn't smiled, you wouldn't say hello. Now, every time, it took me a lot of effort. So whenever I saw him, first to recognize that I'm seeing him mentally. And then to say, hi, I'm Professor Renu Malaviya. I'm the one who has white hair. I'm the one, to explain that, the one who talks a lot, something like that, because he can't see. But I didn't know how to do it. Next time again, he's sitting in the corner. I ignored him. It was just not a part of my whole social norms. Social norms, I'm senior, others will come and say, hello, ma'am. Yeah, this person's not doing it. I am not able to break those social norms. Does it feel the same for anyone else who is in the group? It takes a lot of energy to break the socialization processes that we have grown up with. So the limitation was in my confidence. And then I felt, मैं ही बोल रही हूँ ये 50 और मेरे जो colleagues हैं वो मेरे बारे में क्या सोच रहे होंगे. Even with my gray hair, white hair, not even gray, I had that feeling. Do others also, any of you also have that feeling? And therefore you're not doing it, able to do it? I have already given you the example of why these attitudinal issues emerge is about the child with dyslexia or the child with SLD. Even management करवा लो उनसे, but पढ़ाई में उनकी फाइल नहीं अच्छी हुई थी. अभी examination just passed by and I was noticing because I had to prepare for this this thing. Also, I think we're running out of time. I'll try. I think, are we running out of time, Dr. Tania?
No, ma'am, we are well in time.
Okay, I have
Yes.
about how much? 5 minutes?
No, ma'am, you can take another maybe 10, 15 minutes, ma'am. We are okay.
Okay, done.
Ma'am, take your time. आपका सेशन इंटरेस्टिंग है और हमें मजा आ रहा है सुनने में. प्लीज.
Thank you.
हाँ, टाइम को लेके आप परेशान मत होइए. और
अच्छा,
कोई नहीं
ठीक
आपके
है.
अलावा. जी.
So अभी the exams, the timetable, the exams were going on. So, and I was preparing for this. So I had this in mind. And what happened was, EOC में, those are the children who land up coming late. You ring them up, मैम मेट्रो में पहुंच रहे हैं, मैम ITU पे फंस गए, मैम वहां हो गया. And many of the teachers were getting so irritated because if you have a EOC candidate and you already have to wait, your inflation becomes 4 hours. And for the others, it is 3 hours. So you're spending 1 more extra hour in that college where everyone's gone away, right? So what was happening is time management. And some of us were trying to tell them, this is the problem they have. They find it difficult to understand. And the whole group was telling us, that is what they have to learn. They have to learn how to manage time. But then It was so difficult to explain to them. अगर वो कुछ भी कर लेंगे, फिर भी उनको 5 और 10 मिनट में जो एक्चुअल डिस्टेंस है, वो नहीं समझ में आएगा। यहाँ से एक और एग्जाम्पल देती हूँ, छोटे से बच्चे का था, जो we go for those remediation classes, and there was this boy, and so teaching them how to use the clock. डिसलेक्सिया में क्या होता है, मैं ये समझाने की कोशिश कर रही हूँ. And the teacher was trying to, the special education was trying to, educator was trying to teach him that अगर जब 12 से जब 6 तक चली जाती है बड़ी वाली सुई, तो आधा घंटा होता है. सब कुछ सब कुछ सिखा दिया, सम्स भी ठीक हो गए. The next day the child comes and says, मैम एक बात पूछनी है. क्या बेटा? पर ये आधा घंटा होता क्या है? Again, the teacher went around explaining the whole process. 12 से 6, 6 से 12, अगर 9 से तुम 6 तक भी जाओगे तब भी आधा, and everything possible. मैम, पर ये होता क्या है? The special education, she says, हाँ, clicked something. Says, जितना टाइम तुमको घर से यहाँ तक आने के लिए लगता है, वो आधा घंटा होता है. Very good. Then he asked, जब पापा के साथ आते हैं या मम्मी के साथ आते हैं? मम्मी के साथ वॉकिंग आते थे और पापा के साथ स्कूटर पे आते थे. अब बताओ कि ये टाइम होता क्या चीज है? ये प्रॉब्लम है इस डिसलेक्सिक की, इसलिए वो टाइम पे नहीं पहुंच सकता. सो इन आप इंस्टीट्यूशन ईओसी वालों का काम है, आधे घंटे पहले फोन करना शुरू कर देते हैं, बेटा आप कहाँ पहुंचे हैं, बेटा आप कहाँ पहुंचे हैं, क्योंकि वो उनकी कमी है. कंफर्म योर, ये कुछ आ रहा है या कंफर्म योर स्पीकिंग लैंग्वेज. व्हाट डू आई डू? सेव करूं इंग्लिश? ओके, डन. सेल्फ एडवोकेसी. We have to understand our learners with special education and also make them understand how to do self-advocacy, not self-activism. And as teachers, we are very good in advocacy. Majority of us are not activists. Some of us are. That is also required. That's another thing altogether. We had students from the University of Edinburgh, and like typical, who were with us for about 2 weeks plus whatever, and we had to take them for a trip to Taj Mahal. तो बड़ा important है जाना. Problem, Indian Standard Time. अगर 9 बजे बोला है तो हम 9:30 बजे पहुंचेंगे. सारे dyslexic है क्या हम? I'm just asking. And that group would land up when we said 9 o'clock, they would be ready and in the hall at 8:30. And the driver would have another time altogether. उसको 9 बजे बोलोगे वो 9:45 आएगा. So all this was happening. So this girl who had dyslexia got very upset with me. Says self-advocacy. And I tried to explain that this is what happens in India. I'm so sorry for this, but this is how Indians are and everything. Says, ma'am, if you already need, not ma'am, Renu. Renu, if you already, again, social norms. There for them to say Renu is a social accepted behavior. None of my students, you try and ask them to say Renu, call me Renu every day, they will not be able to call you Renu, me Renu. It will come with Renu ma'am only. So again, a social aspects. Anyway, she said, Renu, if you already knew this, you should have made another flow diagram for me and put it in my bag, which would have clearly explained the difference here and there. I was so taken aback and I was so appreciative of the EOC equivalent department of the University of Edinburgh. They had got the child to do self-advocacy so very appropriately. And are we somewhere going to be able to do this? Limited, when we talk about our children with autism, physical blind, we've understood. Hearing impaired, understand. What do we say in Indian Sign Language for thank you? So 2 things I've learned. today. So every time we learn some more, we're doing it for other languages. Let's start doing it for the hearing impaired. That's another language. Braille is Indian Sign Language is a language. Braille is a script. Okay. So when you're talking about, what was I talking about is the timetables. In the higher education system, timetables keep changing all the time. And if you happen to be in the education department, pan India, there is no one set timetable. It will continue. There's going to be a school timetable. There's going to be this timetable, this thing. And if you happen to have a neurodiverse, a child with autism, they will find it extremely difficult. It's like the computer. It's like the Google map. अगर उसमें आपने you made a mistake, there are two doors, a gates to your college, and you happen to be this gate opens, but you put in a Google search slightly towards the other gate, the Google map will continue to give you that direction only. It will not be able to see that वो gate पिछले 20 साल से नहीं खुला है. That is my child with autism. So when I change my timetable, the school system has started understanding that. They don't change their timetables easily. And if they do, in some schools, they also put a picture along with the written part. So वो तो अभी हम बहुत बाद में करेंगे. So this is the type of issues that we face. Another thing which we learn when we go for our faculty development programs, for our upliftment, whatever, the program faculty development that we have to do for our APIs for the next grade that we want to go and for whatever else. They talk about the different teaching learning processes that you can use in the classroom. So they tell us how to use a PPT, how to make videos, to do role play, and many, many other things. How to do small group activities. Cross my heart. How many of these things do I actually do in the classroom? NEP 2020 says learner-centered होना है. RPWD Act कह रहा है learner-centered होना है. मैं तो teacher-centered ही हूँ ना. क्लास में जाके लेक्चर या लेक्चर कम डिस्कशन. लेक्चर कम डिस्कशन क्या होता है? जैसे मैंने अभी पूछ लिया बीच में थोड़ा सा. चैट में किसी का है? कोई मेरे से पूछना चाहता है और मैं कहूँगी मैंने डिस्कशन किया है. डिस्कशन नहीं किया, लेक्चर ही कर रही हूँ मैं. और पीपीटी भी नहीं यूज कर रही हूँ. In my classroom, are we using anything beyond that? Is my blackboard reflecting information in a graphic manner, which is simpler to understand? It is special education teaching is nothing else. In my 40 years, I've realized is only effective teaching. I mean, I think this is my quote. If I can ever have a quote on the Google, which is Renu Malaviya's quote, would be this. So in my classroom, I might be teaching political science. Have I made it a compulsory out of my regular schedule to get them a visit to the parliament? Of course, you can't go nowadays, but otherwise. Has a role play been organized? I need to work on this from July, August itself, although I'll be talking about the constitution of the parliament in December. The school teachers do this. We professors don't do this. Teacher education department, I don't know, they might be doing some of it, but generally we're not doing that. I just go and lecture. And that is not what our action policies are talking about. And NAC is also asking for innovative classroom pedagogies that you have used. We really don't have many that we are doing. And if we do, our colleagues may not be very appreciative of it. Our प्रिंसिपल्स और द एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन वुड से इतना टाइम क्यों वेस्ट करते हो? पर वही जो हम स्कूल्स में कहते हैं कि जो चीज आप रोल प्ले के साथ बच्चे को समझाते हैं उसकी रिवीजन नहीं करवानी पड़ती, वो ऑटोमेटिकली हो जाता है। मेरे बच्चे कुछ की हैंडराइटिंग अच्छी नहीं है, उनको नहीं अच्छा लिखना आता, फिनलैंड ने तो कर लिखना ही बंद कर दो, राइटिंग ही नहीं अब जरूरी है। मैं ये नहीं कह रही हूँ कि राइटिंग नहीं होनी चाहिए, पर अगर नहीं है तो क्या उसकी इंटेलिजेंस कम है? हम राइटिंग के ऊपर उसको मार्क्स दे रहे हैं। Then the student comes over and says, "Ma'am, can I give you in typing?" The other student says, "Can I give you in handwriting?" And what do you say? सब लोग हाथ से लिख के देंगे। क्यों? क्योंकि एक नई चीज आई है, चैट जीपीटी, वहां से कॉपी कर लेगा। मुझे भी तो इतनी चैट जीपीटी आनी चाहिए, उतनी एआई आनी चाहिए कि मैं पता कर लूं कि उसने कॉपी किया या नहीं किया। तो वेयर एम आई एज अ रेगुलर, what do we say, a constant regular learner? तो कहीं तो बहुत सारा करना पड़ता है। ऑलरेडी आज जॉब आफ्टर आई थिंक कोविड हैज इंक्रीज्ड, एंड व्हाट आई एम ट्राइंग टू से इज दैट ये भी चाहते, बट आई नो ऑल ऑफ अस आर वर्किंग ऑलमोस्ट 24/7, who asked us to be professors? Let's go to something else. But if we are here, we have no option but to be lifelong learners. So this is what is called universal design of learning. In a very simplistic manner, I'm telling the what of learning, the why of learning, and how of learning. Now, what is the why of learning? The student needs to be engaged to understand कि मैं ये क्यों पढ़ रहा हूँ। आजकल व्हाट्सएप पे वो जा रहा है ना मैथ्स का, वो मैथ्स टीचर को अपने फोन करते हैं स्कूल में कि सर आपने मुझे साइन थीटा कॉस थीटा ये सब पढ़ाया था, तो वो कहाँ यूज होता है? वो उनका कहीं नहीं यूज होता। आगे कहीं मुझे यूज करना होगा, नहीं यूज करना था। तो फिर आपने मुझे इतना क्यों मारा था स्कूल में? तो दैट्स अ जोक व्हिच गोज ऑन व्हाट्सएप। तो engagement is so important, and where will it take me? जब भी तो मैं पढ़ूंगी, नहीं तो मैं क्यों पढ़ूंगी? Second is representation. The representation as I, the learner, understands, not only as me, the teacher. So मुझे वो 9-10 डिफरेंट तरीके मेरी क्लास में उसी कंटेंट के लिए होने चाहिए। बहुत बड़ी बात कह रही हैं मैम, बोलना बहुत आसान है यहाँ पर प्लेटफॉर्म पे, क्या आप करती हैं? इज द क्वेश्चन दैट मस्ट बी गोइंग इन ऑल एवरीवन्स माइंड। कोशिश थोड़ा बहुत करते, एक सब्जेक्ट को स्टार्ट, एक कंटेंट का स्टार्ट कर लो। आज इस साल में, अगले में दूसरा, and it will automatically lead to more inclusive classrooms. More diverse methods of teaching that you use to teach the same content leads to inclusion, because different ways of learning gets impacted, and actions and expressions is how you allow them to express themselves. Somebody wants to talk, somebody wants to draw, somebody to do this. So in the examination now, they've started having in the question papers also elaborate by a graph, written writing, or in any way this concept. So can our question papers be changed in that way? Coming to our college libraries, you know, when we go for these historical places, तो वहां वो ऑडियो लगा होता है, उसको दबाओ, वो अगले इतनी दूर तक जो वो हिस्टोरिकल मॉन्यूमेंट है उसके बारे में बता देता है। अगर ऐसा मेरी लाइब्रेरी में बना लगा वो जगह जगह पे, ज्यादा मुश्किल नहीं है आजकल, पर कितनी लाइब्रेरीज में लगा है, और वो खाली विजुअल इम्पेयरमेंट, पर्सन विद विजुअल इम्पेयरमेंट के लिए नहीं है, वो डिसलेक्सिक को भी पसंद आएगा, वो आपको और मेरे को भी पसंद आएगा। कहाँ एक एक किताब को ढूंढो, हाँ, वहां से पता चल जाएगा कि किस डायरेक्शन में जाना है, क्या करना है। आजकल वो ईयरफोन्स भी होते हैं। तो ये भी है। साइन लैंग्वेज, प्लीज, सॉरी, कितना अच्छा दूर से कर सकते हो आप ये, राइट? सो दीज आर टाइप ऑफ थिंग्स व्हिच वी आर वी पुटिंग इट इनटू आवर क्लासरूम्स? We have raised, what do we say, where we take out the printouts. So the whole um, paper that comes out is on a raised thing. So now that is what is called a raised printout. Printout. It's not very expensive. Are we using text and speech and everything is in our mobiles now? So it's not just such a big thing, but there are many other things that we can put into the room. In the libraries do we have, and in the libraries as well as where we have the nameplates, are they in braille? Are they at a distance which is arm length? Because most of the placements of our nameplates is high up there. Do we have tactile flooring, tiles? Do we have a and all? I'll give you an example. Tactile tiles everywhere, but when you move from one level to the other, there is a 1 inch variation. The wheelchair cannot go. A very Indian thing. We are a collective. We like to do things for others. We we do not want our children to be completely independent of us. So that is what goes into our institution. You ask the institution, you ask them, so नहीं कोई बात नहीं मैम, हम व्हील चेयर उठा के इधर रख देंगे और 4 बच्चे आ भी जाएंगे करने के लिए, no problem. But that person's self-independence is hampered. There are all these programs that we already have been watching. There's a whole serial, I love to watch it, The Good Doctor. If you haven't, please do. And there was Antara, there's My Name is Khan, and of course Tare Zameen Ka. By the way, I know for sure, Tare Zameen Ki ka part 2 bhi aane wala hai. So these are things, are we looking at that? And that will give us a lot of insight into what I can do in my classrooms. The attitude, the stereotypes that have to be made, and the physical infrastructure changes. My last example, Naresh, example, हमें खाली कहानियां सुनाई है, मैंने कुछ और तो किया नहीं है आज. When you're talking about, remember the Indian Spinal Injury Hospital, which was started by by Major Aluwalia. I had the privilege of talking with him while he was on his motorized wheelchair and I was walking on my 2 legs. Oof, it was so difficult because the corridors are perfect there, the ramp is perfect, the lift buttons are at the right places, and so on, also everything else there. So I was the handicapped. He would just gallop his wheelchair onto the right, and poor Renu Malaviya, idhar ko move karu, udhar ko move karu. So if the entire physical environment is smooth, then automatically the empowerment of the person with disability happens. And then you are able to see the capabilities and abilities of that person and you revisit your own abilities. And that IAS officer whose 2 legs and 1 arm was cut by the train. And he is an IAS officer. So there are so many examples which going to move out, should be in our classrooms. And they should move out of a classroom to larger platforms. And with that, I stop myself to say that inclusion is not easy, but you start working on it and automatically it becomes a junoon. and you are not able to stop it. So thank you so much for giving me so much time and helping me voice whatever I wanted to say. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, ma'am. It's always uh, really a pleasure listening to you. And throughout this, this discourse, I think it's such a, I mean, it's a very serious kind of, discussion. I could see right from the beginning, we had 100 participants and not even one has gone less. It has been so engaging, and perhaps it's because the matter is very serious to be understood, that we talk of inclusion, we are speaking, but are we really doing it or not? And how you've brought it out with examples. I mean, initially when we had a talk to start the webinar, even this afternoon when you called up, uh, it's just that there are so many concepts, the 21 disabilities you've touched about, the visual impairment, hearing impairment. We still haven't touched on the other disabilities.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So and taking it from inclusion and from daily life examples, and how we need to reflect on where we are and our uh, very very small things that we neglect. And inclusion is something, is something like about an attitude, about a mindset that we need to. And really thank you for the examples. If you please allow me, can I take a few questions? There are a lot of appreciations in the chat box, but साथ में मैम बहुत कुछ सवाल भी हैं, अगर आप मुझे allow करें. Can I take 2-3 questions, please?
Sure, please.
Yes. So there is a question by Dr. Yogita Rana. She is asking, ma'am, how do cultural attitudes towards disability influence the success of inclusive education initiatives?
Of course. We also, when we're talking, there's so much talk nowadays about indigenous knowledge. Somewhere, and because of that, I had been going into, luckily, unfortunately, my Sanskrit has gone for a sixer, but I surely would like to revisit that so that I can read a lot of scriptures which are talking about inclusion. We had examples, we had rishis, which were, what is the name of the rishi? Who had 8 bones.
Ashtavarga.
Ashtavarga. Right? And we have and the dialogues that go with that. So the culture that we come from talks about inclusion. Have we ever understood, when we're talking about transgender and others, that Sanskrit has 3, it has a stilling, pulling, and a nipustilling. It was already a part of that thing, unforgotten part of our culture. We went very westernized, and ultimately, as of now, of course, karma was something, कर्म की वजह से ऐसा हो रहा है. But remember that also, when I look at it in many parts of our lives, जो हो रहा है मेरे पीछे कर्मों की प्रॉब्लम है, अभी की नहीं है. तो मुझे ये करना है, मुझे एक्सेप्ट करना है. Was how, if we look at it, or probably our ancestors used to look at it that way. But now what has happened? तुम्हारे गंदे कर्म, तुम्हारे खराब कर्म, इसलिए मुझे अलग हटाओ. That was to remove you and make it possible for you to work further in this life. So coming back to the concept of inclusion, I have examples wherein if you go into the villages, you will find, maybe it's not happening now, but it is happening, is there are 2 children, generally boys, girls get married and go away. It's a land society. where land is important. So the person who is intellectually impaired is given the backside of the house, the entrance is there, takes care of the animals, and the child, the boy who is not intellectually impaired, looks after the other aspects. Both are given spaces there, even to the point of I know of experiments done by Grid and others, not experiments, processes, rehabilitations or processes done where girls who would love to be more in the limelight, more dominant, are the ones who are and but belong to that village system where women may not have that sort of empowerment. And when they get married to a person with intellectual disability, both sides gain. Of course, there are many questions on this. Should this marriage happen? Should this not? But I'm just giving you the example of how it used to work earlier. So when you're coming back to the question here, and the now that we are living in, we definitely have an education system which is not very inclusive. But if we can connect with what was there, not immediately in the past, but much earlier than that, and bring it into our education system. In that case, the presence of acceptance of variations is very much a part of our society. There are so many examples where you will find that as Indians, we tend to listen to the other. तुम कैसे करते हो ये चीज? तुम ये कैसे करते हो? हमारे यहाँ ऐसे होती है. It's not a right of rejection. So somewhere we have the ability to accept diversities. Even our constitution talks about acceptance of diversities. So I don't know if I've been able to, in some way, answer the question, or would the person would want to re-ask me the question.
I think, all right, ma'am, maybe we'll take the next question if.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do cultural, here it is, attitudes towards disability influence the success of inclusive education? Yeah, the
There's
question is right here.
There's
So,
yeah. Yes, ma'am.
cultural, so the cultural attitudes is what we need to bring in here. Diversity includes, अगर कोई किसी को कोई मतलब disability है, uska acceptance as of now does create a problem. In our CBR work, community-based rehabilitation, we have actually seen it in the city of Delhi, NCR. When the students go for CBR, community-based rehabilitation, so they go into those areas where there are very small houses, slum areas, etc. So gully ke andar gully and hardly any gully. And when they almost reach that house, jahan child with disability hai, individual with disability hai, the neighbors, the people on the road will direct them towards some other place. And very well, everyone there knows where that individual, that child with disability is. This is happening right here in the capital of the country. We do have cultural issues wherein the family feels that agar we have a person with disability, ye hamari kami hai. So the child is not even, no attempts are even made to take the child and get support for the child, even get these certifications done. And there are schemes, often the money, and we have a lot of things that can be talked about. So it is a very present cultural scenario, which is not permitting the individual to come into the mainstream or at least be visible. and I completely agree with this, is there was an experiment done with children with ADHD or who couldn't walk very well, whose body was or cerebral palsy, were taken to a mall and they were made to sit with their families in an area where the main footfall was not happening. The majority of the people coming to the mall were not coming there. People would walk that distance to come and tell the parents, इन बच्चों को आप यहाँ क्यों लेके आए हो? So the importance, and this is what many special schools are now doing, is taking the children to public spaces. The first point is that the invisible child needs to be made visible. Remember
Yes.
the earlier census had आपके वहाँ कितने बच्चे हैं, बच्ची नहीं था, तो घर में उस समय बच्चे ही दिए थे, तो बॉयज का ही नंबर दिया गया था. फिर उसके बाद नेक्स्ट सेंसस में वो चेंज करना पड़ा था, आपके यहाँ कितने लड़की हैं कितने लड़के हैं. तो वो ही कुछ ऐसा करना पड़ेगा, पब्लिक स्पेसेस में इनको लाना बहुत जरूरी है.
Bilkul, ma'am. Absolutely. Ma'am, there's one more question. I think we should take up this question also, that as you mentioned that, one has to make it visible, and we are talking of attitudinal changes, and ये हमने बात educators के attitudinal changes की भी करी. There's a question here that, even if you're having an inclusive classroom, how to motivate other students in inclusive classrooms to accept and to include children with special needs, because this sometimes becomes really a challenge for a teacher. So how do you deal with this?
First is the acceptance, of the institution, the teachers. Then comes in the acceptance of the others. This red hair example. After that, orientation was done with the entire class and explanation of exactly what is the type of personality, behavior, way of looking at things of this particular young adult. The peer group was informed. No, two sentences, that this is the sentence used. If she's trying to do something, you have to say no with her name. No, this is not done. You will not do this. Remember, this girl gets very good marks, does very well in her exams, in her thing, but socially approved behavior. So the peer group needs to be oriented. For the peer group to be oriented, the faculty and others need to be oriented, to be ready to accept that change. That's one thing. I also want to give an example here. It's part of a nursery school right in Delhi. There was this girl, and it was an after school care attached to an institution of Delhi University. So children used to come from school and they grew up from the creche time, and then they went to the big school, and then that would happen. So they were friends from when they were barely 1 year old or even less than that till whenever they stayed in the after school. There was this girl who had a problem. It is called hydro something. She had a very big head. The water had to be seeped out every couple of months or something. The younger children who were 2, 4, 5 years were informed that इसको धक्का नहीं देना है. अगर, and it was a big thing, no, अगर धक्का दे दिया तो everyone would, the adults would be very upset with the children. So the children were very clear. They would keep telling each other कि इसको धक्का नहीं देना है. But they were all those 2 years and 3-year-old boys were literally in love with that girl. And no way from Indian human standards was she good looking with such a large head. 25 years later, there was a reunion, and it's an actual fact. example I'm giving of this particular city itself. All these young children who are now 25 plus, and they said, ये कैसे ऐसे तब भी ऐसी लगती थी. See what society does. And that is where we catch them young. The peer group has to, and when you're making a change in your anywhere, you start from limited people. There'll be 2 people in your classroom who are ready for change. You take them along, and gradually the tribe increases. So this is how peer group sensitization has to be done, is mostly done in the education system. Then limitations, uski strengths kya hai?
Yes, ma'am. So I think, ma'am, these were 2 basic questions that have come. Besides that, I'm sure you can see a lot of appreciations. In fact, everyone has found your session very, very relevant and very insightful. And in fact, there are requests that we should have more and more of such sessions, for the prospective teachers as well as even teachers, and also to, have more continuous professional development programs on culturally relevant pedagogies and on
Absolutely.
inclusive education. So we will certainly continue this, and we will also keep seeking your guidance to take this forward. So no more questions, I think, because most of them have been, ma'am, taken up.
Answered. So
Yes,
we can
they've
say
been answered.
goodbye now.
We'll just like to just propose a vote of thanks. But before that, I would, in fact, there's a request that please plan some sessions on equity as well. So it's so nice that after your session, people are coming out with the kind of sessions they look forward to have. It's been wonderful, ma'am. And before I actually propose a formal vote of thanks, I would like to invite Dr. Sanjay Kumarji to please say a few words. Welcome, Dr. Sanjay.
जी, thank you so much, Professor Tania. नमस्कार, प्रोफेसर रेनू मालविया मैम को मैंने फेसबुक पर, क्योंकि हम फेसबुक पर फ्रेंड्स हैं, तो अभी तक जो मैं मैम से इम्प्रेस था वो ये था कि एनिमल लवर के तौर पे मैम को मैंने बहुत काम करते हुए देखा. जब भी मैं देखता हूँ कि मौसम में जरा सा भी कुछ गड़बड़ होती है तो मैम सारी चीजों को छोड़ के और अपने मिशन पर निकल पड़ती है. तो वो एक बहुत अच्छी बात है, क्योंकि बहुत कम लोग हैं जो इतने सेंसिटिव हैं और इस तरह की चीजों को करते हैं. और अक्सर मैं लोगों को दिखाता भी हूँ, मैं आपके पोस्ट्स और आपके जो फोटोग्राफ शेयर होते हैं तो मैं लोगों को इंस्पायर करता हूँ कि जब एक दिल्ली यूनिवर्सिटी में प्रोफेसर ये सारी चीजों को कर रहे हैं ग्राउंड पे जाके, तो आप लोग क्यों नहीं कर सकते? अगर सब मिलके करेंगे तो काफी चीजें हो सकती.
बिल्कुल.
तो वो चीज, उस चीज के बारे में बड़े अच्छे से रेनू मैम को जानता था. लेकिन आज इंक्लूसिव एजुकेशन पे मैंने पहली बार, मैं अगर बात करूं, मैं 48 ईयर्स का हो गया, तो एक जो सेशन है कंप्लीट, वो फर्स्ट टाइम मैंने सुना इंक्लूसिव एजुकेशन पर. और हमारे सीटीपीटी इंडिया में जो हमने स्टार्ट किया था तब सभी के ना अलग अलग पैशन है. जैसे मेरा डिजिटल में है, प्रोफेसर तानिया से मेरी मुलाकात हुई तो उनका इंक्लूसिव एजुकेशन में बहुत ज्यादा है. तो मैं अक्सर कह भी रहा था कि इस प्लेटफॉर्म से आप कुछ ऐसा शुरू कीजिए, क्योंकि एज ए एडमिनिस्ट्रेटर जो आमतौर पर मैं 4 चैलेंजेस देखता हूँ, उसमें एक तो ट्रेनिंग का, टीचर्स की ट्रेनिंग का. इवन जो स्पेशल एजुकेटर्स हैं वो भी उतने कन्विंस्ड नहीं है और वो भी कुछ करने को तैयार नहीं है. 1-2 लोगों से कभी कभी मैं पूछता हूँ तो मैं ऐसे ऐसे आंसर्स मिलते हैं कि हम इसलिए कर रहे हैं कि इधर कंपटीशन कम है, गवर्नमेंट जॉब मिल जाएगी. इस तरह के आंसर्स होते हैं जब वो स्पेशल एजुकेशन में कुछ कर रहे होते हैं. टीचर्स ट्रेनिंग हो. दूसरा, फिर अगर हम मैनेजमेंट साइड में जाए, गवर्नमेंट इंस्टीट्यूशंस को ज्यादा नहीं देखा, लेकिन प्राइवेट इंस्टीट्यूशंस की बात करूं तो इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर को लेके काफी शॉर्टेज है. वो कहीं ना कहीं रैम्स और टॉयलेट्स तक जाके सिमट जाता है. उससे आगे की चीजें मुझे खासकर मेजोरिटी में नजर नहीं आती प्राइवेट इंस्टीट्यूशन. वो चैलेंजेस है. अवेयरनेस का एक काफी बड़ा गैप है जो नजर आता है, और जिसकी वजह से फिर ड्रॉप आउट्स भी होते हैं. इवन स्कूल से भी ड्रॉप आउट्स का मैंने देखा कि जहाँ टीचर्स को लगता है कि इस बच्चे के साथ ज्यादा मेहनत करनी पड़ेगी, तो स्पेशल एजुकेटर टीचर्स मिलकर कोशिश ये करते हैं कि ये अगर टीसी ले ले, बाहर चला जाए किसी स्पेशल स्कूल में, तो वो ज्यादा अच्छा है कि हमारी जो नॉर्मल वर्किंग है वो डिस्टर्ब नहीं होगी। आमतौर पे जो एटीट्यूड है अभी भी इस तरह का, और जो स्पेशल एजुकेटर्स है जिनको कि कहीं ना कहीं एटीट्यूड को चेंज करने में एक काम करना चाहिए, वो नहीं कर रहे हैं अभी तक मैं देख रहा हूँ। तो इसमें से दो चीजें अच्छी हैं जो आज प्रोफेसर तानिया गुप्ता मैम ने स्टार्टिंग की, और पहला सेशन क्योंकि आपका रखा तो आप हमेशा याद भी रहेंगी हमें, क्योंकि शुरुआत आपसे की हमने कि टीचर्स ट्रेनिंग में और अवेयरनेस में कम से कम सीटीपीटी इंडिया एक अच्छा रोल प्ले कर सकता है डेफिनेटली आगे, और हम करेंगे। थैंक यू सो मच।
ये एक एकोमोडेशन वाला क्वेश्चन यहाँ रह गया है।
Yes, ma'am.
एकोमोडेशन जो है किसी ने लिखा है, वो हाँ फेवर जब तक देखेंगे ना, जब तक उनको, जैसे मैंने बोला ना कि ये तो ना गवर्नमेंट का मैंडेट है, आपको करना ही पड़ेगा। तो वो एकोमोडेशंस को भी जब तक ना वो वहां पर बताना पड़ेगा कि भाई ये फेवर नहीं है, ये तो वहां से आया है, हमको हमें इसलिए करना पड़ रहा है।
बिल्कुल।
बिल्कुल। Thank you, Sanjay ji. Thank you for your insights, your views. So in the end, I'm really humbled, grateful that ma'am आपने आज सेशन लिया, और आई एम होप आपके सेशन से आज सबको इंक्लूजन, अब तक जिस तरह से हम इंक्लूजन को समझते थे, शायद कहीं ना कहीं एक थोड़ी परिवर्तन, कुछ सोच डेवलप हुई है, कुछ अपने टीचिंग को अगर हम रिफ्लेक्ट करें, अपने ही सिस्टमिक वे से हम किस तरीके से चीजों को समझते हैं, क्योंकि इंटेंशन ही अच्छी होनी सिर्फ काफी नहीं है, इसके लिए प्रयास और निरंतर प्रयास होना बहुत जरूरी है। इट्स वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट, जस्ट गुड इंटेंशंस आर नॉट इम्पॉर्टेंट, इट्स ऑल्सो दैट वी मस्ट डू so. Of course, ma'am, you have said that there is a mandate, and you brought about, initially about the glaring reality that even in the school system where, where of course now CBSE mandates to have a special educator, despite that there are many schools without special educators. बट जब तक ये बच्चे हायर एजुकेशन में आते हैं तो ड्रॉप आउट जो आपने रिपोर्ट दी, वो बहुत ही आई वुड से डिसअपॉइंटिंग है कि इतनी मेहनत के बाद भी पर्सन्स विद डिसेबिलिटी जो है वो हायर एजुकेशन सिस्टम से ड्रॉप आउट कर जाते हैं। खैर बहुत सारे कारण हो सकते हैं, बट हम अपने सिस्टम को ज्यादा अकोमोडेटिंग बनाए, और हर एक अपने स्टूडेंट को हम वैल्यू कर सकें, उसके लिए बहुत जरूरी है, जैसे मैम ने आज बताया, कि हम ये आइडेंटिफाई कर सकें कितने बेहतरीन एग्जाम्पल्स के थ्रू एंड सक्सेस स्टोरीज के थ्रू मैम ने बताया कि ठीक है, अपना पर्सपेक्टिव, अपनी पेडागोजी, अपने असेसमेंट्स को एक फ्रेश लुक देखें और दें, और हम चेंज करें। ये बहुत अहम सवाल है कि डिसेबिलिटी कहाँ है, इंसान में डिसेबिलिटी है या मानसिकता में या सोच में या एटीट्यूड में डिसेबिलिटी है। So thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much for this wonderful session. And we will keep on having you more and more on platform. And we really hope that we can do something, disability wise, we can go forward with every disability, understanding, learning disability, autism. This is the need of the hour. जब पहचानेंगे ही नहीं अपने बच्चों के अंदर क्या उनकी स्पेशल एबिलिटीज हैं, क्या वो हमसे चाहते हैं, तो हम रिस्पॉन्सिव नहीं हो सकते। So grateful to you, ma'am. Thank you for your time. Thank you to all the participants. Thank you, Reena ji and Dr. Sanjay ji. And ma'am, this is a small little memento, a virtual memento from the family of CTPD, as a token of gratitude to you for being our expert speaker today, and inaugurating this circle with your such meaningful and commendable deliberation. Thank you so much, ma'am, and please accept this on behalf
Thank you
of.
so much for having me on such an important platform. Thank you
Thank
so much. And
Thank you. So the chat box has the feedback link. I hope everyone has filled it. Reena ji, thank you so much for being here. Right?
मैम वीडियो ऑन करने के लिए और बोल दीजिए एक बार सभी को, जिससे
हाँ
ग्रुप।
जी, please switch on the video. everyone. And also special thanks to Dr. Jugnu. She's also here for the full time she was here. And all the participants who are here with us, keep giving us your inputs. आप अपने ग्रुप पे जो हमारा सर्कल ये फॉर्म हुआ है, इस पे आप अपने इनपुट्स दें कि किस तरह के सेशंस आप आगे चाहेंगे कि हम समावेश के अंतर्गत कर सकें। और कोशिश ये रहेगी कि हम अलग अलग डिसेबिलिटीज के ऊपर बात करें, उसे समझें, अपनी टीचिंग स्ट्रेटजीज को कैसे हम इम्प्रूव कर सकते हैं, किस तरह से असेसमेंट्स में चेंजेस ला सकते हैं। तो ये प्रयास हमारा रहेगा। और कोशिश इस प्लेटफॉर्म से हमारी ये भी रहेगी कि कुछ हम पेरेंट्स को भी इन्वॉल्व करें, कि एक पर्सपेक्टिव उनकी तरफ से भी हम देखें डिसेबिलिटी का, और एडमिनिस्ट्रेटर्स की तरफ से भी देखें, और टीचर्स की तरफ से भी हम देखें। सो थैंक यू सो मच एवरीवन, and see you for the next program. Please stay connected.
मैम वो फीडबैक लिंक जरा एक बार शेयर करें मैम, वो मिल नहीं रहा है
फिर कर
चैट
देते,
बॉक्स।
हाँ जी, फिर कर देते। We'll just do it. होल्ड कीजिए, अभी शेयर कर रहे हैं। So it has been posted, the feedback link. Kindly fill it